Students, this video is all about tools to measure and then also how to measure them. So beakers are used to heat, store, or stir liquids. And then if you are going to heat the liquids within the beaker, you are going to use beaker tongs in order to handle those hot beakers. We also might use a compound microscope. Compound microscopes are called compound because they actually use two lenses to magnify the objects that you're trying to look at. When you're using a compound microscope, you're probably going to use a cover slip. This is going to be placed over the specimen that you are trying to get a close-up look at. Here are some flasks. Flasks are primarily used for heating and storing of liquids. A flask is slightly different from the beaker because if you look at the top of the neck, it's more enclosed and it's a lot smaller. So we can actually put a rubber stopper on those flasks to close the system. And so a flask is going to have a different purpose than a beaker. We can also use an eyedropper. An eyedropper or a very small pipette is used to transfer very small amounts of liquid. Sorry about that. When you're using a compound microscope, you will probably use a glass slide, and this is used to place specimens on to observe under a microscope. And remember that we want a very, very, very thin slice of our specimen or whatever else we're looking at in order to place it underneath the cover slip in order for light to pass through it. These tube-like things are not actually called tubes, they're actually called graduated cylinders, and they come in various sizes depending on the amount of liquid that you are trying to measure. Here's a magnifying glass. It could also be called a hand lens. It only uses one lens to make an object look bigger. A meter stick is used to measure distance. It's 1 meter in length. Petri dishes are used to hold specimens for observation, or you could grow cultures or other things in them. Rubber stoppers can be used to either plug a test tube or even a flask for safekeeping. Safety goggles are very important. Safety goggles are extremely important. They are to be worn over your eyes when indicated. They are not to be worn over your forehead. They are not to be worn over your chin. They are to be worn over your eyes. That funny little brush thing is to clean out our test tubes. If test tubes are very hot, we're going to use test tube holders. You pinch the test tube holders together and then it will release or squeeze your test tube. We hold test tubes in a test tube rack because most test tubes are rounded on the end, and so we need a test tube rack in order to hold them upright. There you can see the test tubes. They are also in a test tube rack. There is a thermometer. You'll notice that there is both Celsius and Fahrenheit on that particular thermometer. We will always use the Celsius side of the thermometer because that's the metric unit for temperature. There's a triple beam balance. It's used to measure mass. It reads the mass at our basic unit of mass, which is the gram. Now let's talk, don't know why that keeps coming up, I'm so sorry. Let's talk a little bit about how to properly measure. You will notice on this screen that there are two different types of rulers. Each instrument that we use, whether a ruler or a triple beam balance or a graduated cylinder, all has a limitation. And the limitation is basically whatever markings are on the instrument. So for example, down here at the bottom, you can see that the only markings on here, the smallest markings, are our centimeter markings. So we would have to, if we were trying to find the length of this object, we would have to estimate. So we might estimate that this would be 3.4 centimeters long. But we would have to estimate this place value because we don't really know. We're limited because it's only measured in centimeters. Now, if you compare that to the ruler on the top, we know that there are millimeter markings. So in this case, our object falls right here-ish. Okay? So our object is going to fall in between two of the millimeter markings. So we can see that this is 3.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, but it's like halfway in between the 0.5 and the 0.6. So we might estimate that this would be 3.55 centimeters. Every time that you measure, you have to include an estimated digit. This is the smallest marking on the ruler. This is our estimated digit. This and this one in the bottom measurement we know for sure that this is correct because this was our marking on our ruler, and then this was our last estimated place value. This last estimated place value is what we call significant figures, or sig figs for short. So another way to think about this is that you have to include one digit past the smallest marking on a ruler. So if the smallest marking on your ruler is the millimeter, then you need to include 2 decimal places. Thank you.